dream, and when I dream, and when I dream, and when I dream. Open up your hate and let it open the face. Open up your hate and let it open the face. Get up, come on, get down with the sickness. Get up, come on, get down with the sickness. Get up, come on, get down with the sickness. Open up your hate and let it open the face. Get up, come on, get down with the sickness. You mother, get up, come on, get down with the sickness. You get up, come on, get down with the sickness. And this is the get back.
Copious notes. Oh, now let's try this. This might work better. Hold on. And two. Okay, first off, before we get into the usual laughing at the losers, I'm going to start this one off a little bit different here. Salute to Tennessee and their fans. Man, Tennessee has been through it for, several years here. But yesterday's win, I know it was against South Carolina, but that was a dominating win against an SEC team. And it's just been a while since we've seen that from Tennessee, particularly the second half. Tennessee just moved up and down the field with the ball in the second half. Tennessee's defense completely shut South Carolina down in the second half. And like I said, it's just been a while. But you got to go back to maybe, I would say 2016 to find a performance probably like that for Tennessee. They had no SEC wins in 17. They have two SEC wins last year in 18, and both of those were sort of considered just lucky miracle wins. I mean, really, those two wins that they had last year was more of everyone laughing at the teams they beat than it was looking at Tennessee. And I don't think that was the case yesterday. I mean, this was a dominating game without their starting quarterback, Marr. Now, I know Garantano played okay, and, Shrout played some. But, I mean, like I said, it wasn't just that. I mean, the defense was good. Anyway, so I want to congratulate Tennessee and the fans, particularly the ones, you all know, BVD, Catfish, all those guys that have the YouTube channels. And the fans, even the ones that don't have the YouTube channels, that have stuck around on YouTube, not just on this channel, but BVD's channel, Catfish's channel, all those channels, all the football channels, over the last few years when, let's just be real, Tennessee has been the butt of the majority of jokes on SEC college football channels for the last couple of years, and a lot of those folks have stuck around. So, salute to them. You'll see a lot more of them come out, of course, this week. That you haven't seen in a long, long time. But you've had a lot of them that have been here through thick and thin. And so for those people, I'm happy for those people. They've been waiting, like I said, since 2016, really, I think, to get a win like this. So that's the good news. That's sort of a little bit, I don't usually do that in this video. This is usually laughing at people, like I said, but salute to them. Now to the laughing part. Read the comments on some of my videos yesterday from Tennessee fans. Why are y'all doing this? Everyone is happy for Tennessee right now. It's a great story. And then you people have to run to the comments section already talking about next year. Why do you do this to yourself? Like I said, it's been 3 years since you had a win like this. And instead of enjoying it, instead of celebrating it, instead of taking it for what it is, which is your third win of the season, you guys, not all of you, but a lot of you, like I said, read through some of the comments on my videos I did yesterday after the Tennessee game. I just, you're already beating Georgia next year in Athens. You're competing for the East. Jeremy Pruitt should win Coach of the Year. I mean, it's just, and I'm not necessarily saying that, you can't be good next year, that you automatically won't be. But it's just, I don't know why y'all do this over and over and over. We don't know what's going to happen the rest of this year. You still, you've got to win 3 of your last 4 just to get bowl eligible. I think you can do it. I mean, you're playing 4 of the lower end teams. You got UAB, Vandy, Kentucky, and Mizzou. I think you can beat 3 of those 4, but it's definitely not a guarantee. I mean, that was a great win yesterday. But I don't think Tennessee is good enough and has depth to play at their peak week in and week out. So can you win? If you come out and struggle in a couple of those games in the first half, can you somehow pull out a win? I'm not saying you can't, but it's just people wanted to feel happy and excited for Tennessee fans yesterday after that big win. And it's just like some of these Tennessee fans are just doing everything they can to ruin it by already talking about, how you're going to be the best team in the galaxy in 2020. I don't know why y'all continually do this to yourself. But like I said, I'm still happy for you that you won. But some of you guys are just, let's just move on. We got to talk about the real losers this week. And you have to start with Oklahoma. I thought Oklahoma was going 13-0 in the regular season. I really did. I know Baylor is okay. They're undefeated. I think we'll talk a little bit about them in a little bit. But Oklahoma's non-con was bad. Let's just call it for what it is. It's not that you played 1 or 2 bad teams. Everybody plays 1 or 2 bad teams in the non-con. You don't have a marquee non-con game this year to sort of fall back on. The Big 12, I know you're going to try to tell everybody that Baylor... listen, Oklahoma fans are going to be the biggest Baylor fans on planet Earth for the remainder of this season, okay? Because outside of Oklahoma, it looks like there might not even be any good teams in the Big 12 unless Baylor is the real deal. And I just don't know... obviously, it's going to depend what happens in the other conferences. And, there's a lot of football left to be played. There's a lot of good on good left to be played where some teams have to lose, starting this weekend with Georgia, Florida. So I get all that. But it is not a guarantee that a 12-1 Oklahoma will make the playoffs, I don't think, because there's not going to be a great win, I don't think. Texas, well... We'll talk about them in a minute, but so I just don't know if there's going to be enough on Oklahoma's schedule and resume to get them in at 12-1 if a lot of these other elite teams continue to win, right? It looks like Oklahoma may need some help. Now, some of that happened last night with Notre Dame losing. I don't think Notre Dame was getting in anyway, even if they went 11-1. But now they take their second loss, so obviously there's no way they're getting in. So maybe that helps Oklahoma a little bit. The biggest beneficiaries from Oklahoma's loss would have been Notre Dame. And, of course, a second SEC team maybe. Or possibly a 12-1 Oregon team. So, anyway, I don't know. It's no sense in trying to talk about the playoffs. But, look, this was a bad loss. And, the offense, unfortunately for Oklahoma, and I've been sort of beating the drum for Oklahoma's defense this year here, saying they're, I can't believe how much better they've gotten in just 1 year. And I kept saying, listen, they're not an elite level defense or anything, but when you consider where they were last year to where they were now, they're miles better. And a lot of people argued with me and didn't believe that. And unfortunately, yesterday gives all of those people talking points to use against you for the rest of the year. And because your defense has been so bad over the last couple of years, no matter what you did before yesterday, and no matter what you do after yesterday, those people who weren't a believer in your defense to start with, there's just nothing you can do now to change their mind, because they're just going to point at yesterday's game and say, look, they can't stop a nosebleed. They let Kansas State run up and down the field on them. They were getting blown out 48-23 in the fourth quarter or whatever, late in the third, whatever it was. So I don't know. I don't have any hate for Oklahoma. I've had some fun with Oklahoma fans on this channel going back to 2017 when we played in the playoffs, but I don't have any particular hate for Oklahoma. I crack on them, and I get the occasional comment from Oklahoma fan, this guy just hates Oklahoma. All he does is talk about Oklahoma. The reason people make those comments is because the only videos of mine they watch are the videos that have Oklahoma in the title, right? So anyway, I get that from every fan base. That's not specific to Oklahoma. But the point is, I just don't know now how this is going to shake out for you at the end of the year. We'll find out. Obviously, you've got no more room for error. You still got to play Baylor. You may have to play Baylor twice. I don't know. Texas. Well, we'll talk about Texas now. How do you lose to TCU? Texas is back to losing 4 games. I mean, they're going to lose 4 again this year, like everyone in the offseason tried to tell Texas, but they didn't want to listen. Texas put way too much stock into the Sugar Bowl. I think everyone knew that. Everyone except Texas fan took the Sugar Bowl for what it was. I'm not rehashing all that now. It's obvious now. You just put way too much stock in that. Offensively, it's Sam Ehlinger, and the average person can't name the second player on your offense. I mean, you don't have a great offense, and you need that in the Big 12. Texas, over the last couple of years, has relied primarily on its defense. Well, your defense isn't nearly as good this year as it has been in years past. So it's just, I like Sam Ehlinger. He's one of the toughest players in football. But, you just are what you are. And right now, what you are is about a 4-loss team, 4-loss-a-year team. I mean, it's just what you are. I don't even think Texas not even getting in the New Year's Six Bowl, are they? No, they're not. Sorry for you lost, Texas. Notre Dame, man, this was an interesting game. Notre Dame and Michigan. Well, the game itself wasn't interesting. Michigan blew them out, but the idea of the game was interesting, right? These are 2 teams that really have a reputation of losing and usually getting blown out in big games. Of course, everyone loves to rag on Notre Dame for the 0-for-8 thing, right? They're 0 for their last 8, going all the way back to 1992 in any major postseason game, whether it be a national title game, a BCS bowl game, or a playoff game, or a New Year's Six game, or BCS bowl, whatever. They're just winless. Their 2 biggest regular season games really over the last couple of years, 2017 at home against Georgia, 2019 on the road against Georgia. They lost both of those. They did beat Michigan last year. That's probably their biggest regular season win in a long time. This year, of course, you lose on the road to Georgia. You're still pretending like you have a shot to get in the playoffs. You show up in Ann Arbor, or you don't show up in Ann Arbor. Offense was just pitiful, and Michigan just blew you out of the building. It was just pitiful. Shea Patterson didn't even try to throw the ball in that game, did he? No. It just was hard to watch that game. And it's hard really even to laugh at Notre Dame because if I can remember, I'll put it up on the screen. I told Notre Dame in the offseason, when I did my Notre Dame preview and prediction video this offseason, I said, well, Notre Dame's going 10-2. They're losing at Georgia and they're losing at Michigan. Well, guess what? You're going 10-2, and you lost at Georgia and you lost at Michigan. So type about it, I don't know. I think the best thing Notre Dame could do would be to lose another 1 or 2 games so that they don't make a New Year's Six bowl, so that they maybe can win a bowl game. Because we know if you make a New Year's Six, we just know what's going to happen. Past is prologue. Google it. Yeah, so season over. Wisconsin. Listen. Wisconsin, you're a really good team. You've got a great defense. You've got shutouts in half the games you played this year. It's unbelievable. You got one of the best players in college football in Jonathan Taylor. Got a great offensive line. Ohio State is just that much better than you. You didn't play a bad game. It wasn't the referee's fault. There's no one player you can point to and say, well, he did this or he did that. Ohio State's just that much better than you. Period. It's hard to even laugh at Wisconsin. It's not like you did anything that stupid. You came out, you played your brand of football, and you just got beat. On top of that, it was cold, wet, and rainy, which, in a lot of people's opinion, including my own, favored Wisconsin in that game. Not that I thought that meant they would win the game, but if you look at the type of offenses those 2 teams run, you figure, well, if the rain and all that's going to slow this game down and it's going to be a sloppy mess, you got to like your chances if you're Wisconsin just handing the ball off to Jonathan Taylor in those type of conditions. The problem was, apparently, cold, wet, and rain doesn't affect every quarterback the same way it affects some others. Justin Fields goes out, another 200 yards, another 3 touchdowns like it's nothing. J.K. Dobbins, 100 and something yards rushing. I mean, Chase Young. Why were you not doubled? That's the one thing you can point at. Now, there's no one thing. When you lose this bad, there's no one thing you can say if we just would have done that. But why in the world Wisconsin didn't double team Chase Young is somebody's going to have to answer some questions about that on that coaching staff. That should have been the plan going into the game, but it wasn't. But then after the first quarter, after the first couple of series, some adjustments should have been made, and that should have became part of the plan. What did he have? 4 or 5 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, 4 or 5 tackles for loss, a dozen quarterback hits or pressures. The guy is unblockable, but you didn't even try. I saw a whole bunch of times where Wisconsin had a tight end assigned to block him one-on-one. There's not a tight end on earth that can block him. He's the best player in college football, and you guys didn't even try to come up with a way to even slow him down, much less try to stop him or contain him. He was just a one-man wrecking crew on that defense. So you just got blown out. Unfortunately, it's your second loss because of what happened to Illinois. So I think you'll beat Minnesota because I think Minnesota is a lot of hype right now and not all that good of a team. I think you'll beat Minnesota. But the problem is, who else is going to beat them? Even if you beat Minnesota, you're not going to win the division because you've got 2 Big Ten losses. They have none. So even if you beat Minnesota, you got to count on someone else to beat Minnesota so that you both finish with 2 Big Ten losses and you then win the tiebreaker if you do in fact beat them. So it's an uphill battle at this point for Wisconsin to even win their division. So hard to believe 2 weeks ago people were talking about, could Wisconsin possibly be the best team in the Big Ten and one of the best teams in America? Best defense, shutting all these teams out. To fast forward to now, and you're probably not even a favorite to win your division anymore because of Minnesota. And it won't be Ohio State's fault if you don't win your division. A lot of people expect you to lose that game. It'll be Illinois' fault. My God. So anyway, Wisconsin, it appears as though your season is over because even if Minnesota does lose a couple of games and you beat them, is there anybody that's going to pick Wisconsin in a rematch against Ohio State? No, and that game's played indoors, so the weather will be perfect in there. 72 degrees and no breeze. So they'll beat you worse in there than they did in the elements, as it were. So sorry, but season's over. You already know. Auburn. I'm not going to laugh at Auburn either because this was a good game. One of the few really entertaining and interesting games we had yesterday. And what did they end up losing by? 3, I think it was? I think it was 3. Where the hell? How in the hell? 23-20 on the road at LSU. That's not an embarrassing loss. But but your season is still over. You already know that. That's your second SEC loss, and you still got to play Georgia and Alabama. And DeBarner's going to be quick to point out 2017, where they also had 2 losses heading into that stretch of games at the end, and they miraculously beat Georgia and Alabama in the same season to win the West before getting monkey drugged by Georgia in the SEC title game. Yes, we know that. There's a reason everyone talks about that all the time. There's a reason that everyone remembers that. And it's not because it's normal or ordinary. It's not because it's likely to happen in most given years. The reason people talk about that all the time, the reason that people remember that, the reason that was such a big deal is because it's rare. Extremely rare. It's rare that you beat either Georgia or Alabama in any given year, especially this century. But it's even more rare that you beat them both. Come on. Hasn't Georgia beat you like 11 out of the last 15 games? Alabama's close to the same, not quite. Georgia has a better record against you over the last 10 or 15 years than Alabama does, but not by much. we both own and dominate you. So no one expects you to win both those games. I'm sorry. Now, and when I say all that, I fully expect the Barner to be in the comments section for the rest of the season, pointing to those two games and talking about 2017 nonstop. I fully expect that, and I embrace it. That will make it a lot more fun when it doesn't happen, and Georgia and Alabama both beat the doo-doo out of you. That'll make it that much better then. But yeah, your season's definitely over in that. And Bo Nix, man, it's time to start asking some questions about this. Bo Nix is terrible. He's had, in my opinion, he's had 2 good games, and they were against 2 of the worst teams you've played, Mississippi State and Arkansas. Outside of that, he's looked not even average. He's looked absolutely terrible. He was terrible against Oregon. Don't try to tell me about the end of the game in Oregon. That was a terrible decision he made at the end of that game against Oregon. He never should have thrown that ball. Auburn was already in field goal range. A field goal would have won the game. He closed his eyes and threw up a 50-50 jump ball, and he just got lucky that the Barner came down with it and scored. That it was pure luck. You look at everything up to that game, he played terrible. He played terrible against Florida. It's one of the worst QB games I've ever seen. He played terrible yesterday against LSU. How you managed to stay that close in that game with one of the worst quarterbacks in the Power 5 is beyond me. But he's terrible. He's not any good. And he shouldn't be the starter. This is nepotism. That's what this is. This is a prime example of a coach choosing or picking a QB for a reason other than he's the best for the job. Period. Bo Nix is the starter at Auburn this year because his daddy won 8 games in 1988. That's the only reason. The only reason. Joey Gatewood has been in that system for a year. Even the Barner himself has been talking about, all the Barner fans for 2 years have been talking about Joey Gatewood. They wanted Stid Baloney benched last year and Gatewood put in. He's been in the system for a year. There's no way. I refuse to believe that Joey Gatewood, had Auburn played Joey Gatewood this entire season, I'm not saying their record would be better because they lost to 2 pretty good teams, but I refuse to believe that Joey Gatewood would have played as bad against Florida and LSU as Bo Nix did. He is awful. He is terrible. He's inaccurate. He's not even that good of a runner. And he is only Auburn's quarterback because of his daddy. And that's a quick way to get yourself fired as a coach. Now, I don't know if Gussie Poo felt some kind of pressure to play him or if he was just doing the guy a favor. I don't know. But this nepotism, this picking favorites for reasons other than football ability, and this is something I know a little bit about going back to last year. Coaches need to learn. You better play the best player you have and not pick and choose players for other reasons. But let me move on from that. But the Barner season is over. It just is. Missouri, 29-7 to Kentucky. Missouri, on the one hand, this is surprising. On the other hand, it's not. Talked about Missouri a lot this offseason on this channel because of the Kelly Bryant thing. How's that going to work out? And the postseason ban. How much does a postseason ban affect a team's motivation in the offseason and then throughout the year? How much? I think a lot of that is kind of how the coaches handle it. I think a lot of it is the maturity of the team. Do you have a veteran team? Do you have a young team? It appears to me that the bowl ban is having an effect on Missouri this season. You look at week 1, unexplainable loss to Wyoming. Then they look like one of the best teams in the East over the next month of the season, reeling off 4 or 5 wins in a row. Then they lose to the second worst team in the SEC, Vanderbilt, last week. Then they come out this week and lose to the 3rd or 4th worst, depending on where you rank some of the other teams, in Kentucky. Lynn Bowden, who, couldn't gain a yard last week, comes out yesterday and gets over 200 yards rushing. Now, he couldn't throw the ball. I think he was like 3 of 7 for 50 or 60 yards or something. So, but that makes it even worse. They didn't even try to throw it. They just lined a wide receiver up at quarterback, ran it down your throat. So, on one hand, I feel sort of bad for Missouri and Kelly Bryant in particular. Now, I don't think Kelly Bryant went to Missouri with intentions on winning the SEC or making a national title run. I think he went to Missouri because he knew he could play 100%. And he wanted to be in a pro style type of offense, or at least an offense that was going to throw it a lot, to try to prepare himself or prove to the NFL scouts that he could make it in the NFL as a quarterback. I don't know if he's accomplished that goal. That'll be up to the NFL scouts and whatnot at the end of the year. We'll see where he lands there, but disappointing loss from Missouri to Kentucky. And the toughest part of Missouri's schedule is still to come. They still have to play on the road at Georgia, and they host Florida at home. Now, they've only beat Georgia one time since coming into the SEC. I don't think anybody expects this year to be the second time. On the other hand, they've completely dominated Florida the last couple of years. They've blown Florida out 2 years in a row. Hard to see that coming right now. Now, if Georgia beats Florida this weekend and Florida's season sort of ends, maybe they lose a little bit of motivation and Missouri can catch them again. I don't know. That's a lot of ifs and what ifs and, down the road type stuff there. But Oklahoma, Texas, Wisconsin, Notre Dame, the Barn, and Missouri. Man, great list of losers. It's just what it is. Anyway, big wins yesterday. I talked about Tennessee. Hats off to Tennessee. Michigan. Give Michigan some credit. Dog Harbaugh can't win a big game. Regardless of what you think about Notre Dame, this was a pretty big game. It was a home game for Michigan at night. The fans were rowdy, even though the weather was terrible. So I think you have to say this is a pretty good win for Michigan, and they blew them out. Clemson won 59-7. No one cares about that. But Sunshine didn't throw any interceptions. So I don't know if they got him back on the tater juice or he just got lucky and had a good game or what. But no interceptions for Trevor Lawrence. That's a positive sign. Miami and FSU both won on the same weekend. That's a rare occurrence. So they're both sitting at 4 wins apiece now. Congrats, I guess. I don't know. North Carolina beat Duke. No one cares, but rivalry game. North Carolina beat Duke 2017. Did Kansas win? Kansas beat Texas Tech, and that's their 3rd win. Now, that might not sound amazing to you, but Kansas hasn't won 3 games in very many seasons over the last 10 or 15 years, so Les Miles effect, I guess. I don't know. Ohio State, talked about them, dominated Wisconsin. Justin Fields, 203 TDs, no big deal. Penn State, 28-7 over Michigan State in a game that some people were predicting could be a letdown for Penn State. Another game where the weather was terrible. Penn State dominates, 28-7. They're still undefeated. Minnesota dominated Maryland. Whoopity-doo. Oregon won again. Close, though, 37-35, but they're still alive at 7-1. A slim chance there, especially with Oklahoma and Notre Dame losing yesterday. Oregon could be a sneaky team to keep an eye on. Utah, 35-0. They're probably going to win the Pac-12 South. Them or Southern Cal, I don't know. Alabama, 48-7 with a backup quarterback. They're winning 41-0 at halftime against Arkansas. Again, don't even watch that game. And your light show is ridiculous and stupid. It's a dollar store light show. Quit. Y'all shouldn't even do it. Unplug it. You try to copy Georgia and it just didn't work out. It is what it is. And of course, LSU 23-20 over the Barn. Who's the best team? So this is no secret anymore. No particular order. Here's your best teams. Ohio State, LSU, Alabama, Clemson, Penn State. Do you put Penn State in that category? I think you do. Now, of course, they got to play some good teams still in the season. Big game with Ohio State looming down the road. A couple of other tricky games too. But, I mean, when you start talking about undefeated teams, I mean, the calendar's fixing to hit November. Here's your undefeated teams. Bama, LSU, Ohio State, Clemson, and Penn State. Those are your undefeated serious contenders. You have 4 other teams that are undefeated. Baylor, SMU, Minnesota, and App State. Forget about SMU and App State. They're fighting over a New Year's Six Bowl. Baylor and Minnesota, do you consider either one of them to be serious playoff contenders? I don't. I don't see Baylor going undefeated, and unfortunately, I don't think Baylor has the clout or the reputation. Let's say Baylor loses to Oklahoma here in a couple of weeks in the regular season, but then beats them in the Big 12 title game and finishes 12-1. I don't think they would get in. Do you? I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Let me know. Minnesota, they're not winning the Big 10. Just stop. They're not a good team. I don't care whether they're undefeated. So to me, those are your serious undefeated teams: Bama, LSU, Ohio State, Clemson, Penn State. Now you got a lot of one-loss teams that are still in it too. Florida, Georgia, Oregon, sure I'm leaving. Utah? Not sure about Utah. So anyway, you got some one-loss teams that if they run the table would definitely get into the play. Any SEC team that wins the SEC title and finishes with one loss would get into the playoffs. Now, we can argue about whether or not Florida or Georgia actually have a chance to do that or not realistically. But no one can argue that if Florida or Georgia, either one, wins the rest of their games and wins the SEC title, they would get in. That's just a fact. So, Heisman candidates. It's time to, I'm going to flip this up a little bit too. I'm starting to narrow my list of Heisman candidates down. I've been doing the same 5 Heisman candidates all year, every week. Here's maybe, count these as maybe my finalists for the Heisman. I don't know. Tua, but I'm keeping an eye on him. You can't be missing a bunch of games in the regular season and win the Heisman. You can't. So he missed one. I don't care about that. But he's got to be back for LSU, or I would say I'm going to take him off my Heisman list. But I still got Tua on it. I got Joe Burrow on it. I got Justin Fields on it. And guess who else I have on it? Chase Young, defensive end, Ohio State. The best player in all of college football, hands down. If you watched that Ohio State game yesterday, then you agree with me. He is a goon, as the kids say. What else is there to talk about? Group of 5, it's going to be SMU. I think we all know that. We don't. We got mental issues, which I might have mental issues anyway. I don't know. Who's Georgia play this week? Dan Mullen is Jim Harbaugh in disguise. And Jim Harbaugh got him a big win over a rival this past week. Something Dan Mullen's been unable to do. Florida. He's got blown out by Georgia last year. I want to just end the video now and save this stuff for this week. But you're going to hear Florida fan all week talking about Georgia's offense. You're going to hear it all week. All week. I want you to look it up for yourself. I want you to look up the rankings. I want you to look up total offense, and I want you to look up points per game. And I want you to tell me who's ranked higher in each of those categories, Georgia or Florida. Let me know. Total offense and points per game. Who's ranked higher? Then, because Florida fans are going to tell you how great their defense is, I want you to look up total defense, and I want you to look up scoring defense. Tell me who's ranked higher. So, all this week, everything Florida says about Georgia's offense, however bad they try to make Georgia's offense out to be, just remember those rankings that you just looked up. And hey, Florida man, and Florida fan, have a terrible morning.